Record. Okay. All right.
Got it.
All right. So here we go. Does my hair look okay? In 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome to another episode of the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
And I'm Mike Gray.
This is episode number 344. And I was telling these guys before we actually hit record that I noticed what I uploaded last week didn't show up on Apple Podcast and or the Apple Podcast platform. And consequently, it probably didn't show up on other platforms either. So it's on streamingchurch.tv. Under the info, we have our blogs and we have our podcast there, but it didn't show up. So sorry about that, folks. So I'll have to reload that. I don't know why that didn't work, but there you go. All right, guys, how's everybody doing today?
Doing great.
All right, super. So let's just jump into things. It's summertime, of course, here in the old Pueblo. But if you're like me, when I was a pastor, I didn't sleep in during the summertime. No, I didn't kick my feet up and go away. I worked hard. And so what I'm getting at here is we're going to talk about 10 tips, maybe more, 10 tips for training church volunteers. So it's summer, but it's a good opportunity to gather some people that might be around for the summer and maybe look into, getting ready for the fall, because it will be here before we know it, and things will be happening. What say ye?
This sounds like a great opportunity.
We hit on this a little bit yesterday. Summer is the time you'd like to really get geared up and ramped up and ready to go, but everybody's on vacation.
Well, not everybody, but yes, that's true. Actually, like a lot of people are on vacation. So anyhow, take it for what it is. Let's talk about 10 tips for training church volunteers. When I was in Bible college, we didn't talk about training volunteers. We did talk a little bit about leadership, so that was good. But we didn't talk about volunteers and how to get volunteers and how to train volunteers. And I think that still is a struggle for many pastors, many people in church today, leadership. We don't understand what it really needs, what needs to happen with volunteers, and how to help volunteers, and how to really get them involved. So let's talk a little bit about that. I've got 10 tips here I've written down, maybe not necessarily in any specific order. Some of them might be, but there's probably more. So let's just jump into this, shall we, guys?
That's good.
All right. Moving right along here. So the first thing I put down was orientation. So when it comes to training volunteers, I put down orientation is one of the best places to start, and one of the best places to cast vision and to share the church policies and procedures with your potential volunteers.
Yes, exactly. The biggest part of this thing is the why. As Simon Sinek made very popular, it's probably been about 15 years ago now, maybe more. But he was going at it from the attitude of why people would buy your product. But this falls into the same kind of thing where people need to understand the why behind why they're volunteering, what they're volunteering for. There's got to be a much deeper mission and vision than just, oh, they need some help, I'll go help them out kind of thing.
Yeah, if you want them to stick around at all, you better bring the why hard and consistently, because people are more and more selective where they contribute their time. And so you got to give them a reason. And we have the greatest reason of all, people's transformation in their lives. And every piece that a volunteer does at a ministry is contributing to that every week.
Yeah. a good way to do this is to use some stories. You know, there's people in your church that their life has been changed because of something, and something that happened in the church or whatever. And so using specific stories is a great way to help cast that vision. But yes, vision is the most important thing here. I mean, you certainly want to talk a little bit about, you know, your policies and whatever, but vision is really where it's at. So, and a good place to do this is orientation.
Yeah, and it's going to smooth things out for down the road as well. So if it's kind of like, you know, all of us contribute to certain charities or certain movements because we really believe in them. We believe in what they're doing, and so we tend to give them some grace too, that you wouldn't normally get. You know, so once you teach the why and why we're, you know, it's bigger than the church and bigger than just me, that as you get into volunteer situation where there's going to be issues like, why are they scheduling me so much? Or don't they ever listen to me? I told them I wanted to only do this on these days. And, you know, if they understand the why, they're going to cut you some slack, and there's going to be some grace, and the relationship is just going to be a whole lot healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. All right. So moving on here, number two, second tip when it comes to helping with volunteers and training them. I put down here, relationships are a key to training. And this is where it gets a little tough for some people because, you know, there's a lot going on. And so relationships imply that you've got to put some time into building relationship. You've got to take time and get to know the person a little bit, and probably be a little transparent and being open to things. And that's hard, especially if you've got a lot going on in your church. It takes time. But again, I see this as an investment.
Yeah. I think this is more challenging with the larger the ministry as well. So I know when I first took my first job out of college, I went and started attending a mega church in Southern California, Chuck Swindoll's church. And it was really challenging to get to the relationship part of being part of that church. It was so big, you know, and nobody knew anybody, you know. It was kind of because it was so big, it made it hard to get and establish some relationships. And when we moved churches.
I think if you are in a different kind of organization and it has to be led from the top down, where relationships are highly valued, then a volunteer leader is going to pour that relationship into the people who volunteers on his or her team. It has to be a value that is ingrained within the organization, and it's led from the top down. Or, as you experienced, Steve, the organization gets so big and it's sometimes so cumbersome and unmanageable that you would feel, I've been there too, in different churches where I felt like, I don't know that anybody has a relationship here. I can't find anybody.
And it also, you know, when the times when, you know, for me, for example, I not too long ago had a very late cancellation of my volunteer opportunity. You know, my wife let me know, you know, we're going to the wedding set, you know, this afternoon. I'm like, what wedding? And so I had to cancel. And the fact that I had relationship with the person that I was going to be working with, or I worked under, I felt really bad. And I really was going the extra mile to try to find somebody and apologizing and say, I won't do this ever again. And then, you know, when he asked later who would be willing to sub in the last minute, I'm like, dude, count me in. You know, we have a relationship that I value and I want to keep it strong. So I feel bad when I felt like I was kind of betraying the relationship a little bit by giving him a 4-hour notice that, I'm not going to be here. So.
Well, That's very unusual for you. You're so well organized too. But yeah, well, it happens. But yeah, good points,
Because I don't
guys.
listen to my wife. She would tell me right away. She, I've been telling you about this wedding for a week. You know, what do you mean you don't know about it?
It's you need to put it on your Alexa calendar there. So all right, good deal, guys. So yeah, relationships are so important. They're important in every aspect of ministry, and especially in the areas of volunteers. All right, so shall we move on here to what's my third point here? Good volunteer training and onboard. Wait, yeah, good. I can't read. Good volunteer training and onboarding. That's a fancy word I use there. Starts with a clear job description. So
Sure, it's not waterboarding.
yeah.
No.
Well, some church. No, it's not good.
No.
So we talked a little bit about orientation at the beginning, but I think this is really drilling down a little deeper to, okay, what's this what are you doing? What is the description here? How does it work? And I don't know, I may be getting ahead of myself because I didn't put this in the notes, but I think that let's move on here. I was going to talk a little about gifting and discovering your gifts, but which I didn't put in the notes
some
here.
of that further on down.
Yeah.
But,
So
but I think this is
go ahead.
pretty critical, Phil, in that you guys have been to a lot of churches, as I have. And I find that for some reason, churches believe they live in this magical world where nothing needs to be defined. Yeah, I need you to do this job. I need you to go over here and be in this room and do this thing. Pat on the back, good luck. And somehow then they feel confident that they know what to do and how to do it. I mean, job descriptions apply to every organization on the planet. There is zero exception to a quality job description to explain to me why I'm here and what I'm supposed to do when I'm here to help you.
Yeah. Good point, Michael.
And I agree. I mean, job description's key. So let's move on.
There you go.
Move on.
That's it.
Point number 4.
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah, you've got to know what you're getting into. Absolutely. All right. So point number 4 here: give volunteers, and this kind of goes along with this. Give volunteers the freedom and flexibility to try multiple roles. So I'm real big on opening up opportunities. It's easy. And depending on the size of your church, it's easy to kind of get possessive of your volunteers. But it's just, this is something that benefits them and benefits our church. But what I'm getting at is it's not about us. It's not about our department or our specific area of ministry. So we want them to excel where they feel comfortable, where they're gifted at. And sometimes you have to just try things, and you need to give people the freedom to try different ministries within your church.
Right. You don't want to get in a position where somebody's like, well, I tried that volunteering thing. It didn't work. It wasn't for me. I can't stand whatever this or that part of those kids were screaming the whole time I was in there, and I'm not doing that ever again. So I'm not volunteering anymore. So yeah, you got to definitely make it so that it's flexible, allow people to bounce around and not look down your nose at them for wanting to switch a job or so. Yeah. I think it's important to give them some flexibility and maybe even plan it. Probably not a bad idea to set up a rotation program with somebody new. Say, hey, we're going to start here for 3 weeks, and then we're going to go over here for 3 weeks, and then we'll go here for this other one for 3 weeks, and then you figure out what's work best for you, and you decide where the right spot is.
Michael, any thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I think Steve's right. It needs to be something you plan into your process, however you do it. Check in with them at 3 weeks and say, are you ready to switch over, or have you found the spot you love?
Yeah.
And I think that's critical, because it's super easy to feel overwhelmingly guilty about wanting to bail on a volunteer spot, but you hate it. You hate it. You know, the kids, as you said, the kids screaming are making me mad. I'm going crazy. Get me out of here. But I got to serve.
Yeah, I think with new people, it's good to give them, an opportunity. A friend of mine used to say, give them an exit ramp, and just build that into things, and if they feel like they need to move on to something different, and they've got the freedom to do that, Absolutely. All right. So number 5, never stop training your volunteers. Again, this is one I think that's overlooked a lot. We get somebody that's in a position volunteering in a specific area of ministry. They're doing a pretty good job. Time to move on and forget about them and go on to something else, another area if you're a leader. But the problem with that is we just kind of take them for granted. And like everybody, we need to grow. We need to grow in what we do and how we live. And so, there's opportunities. Usually there's conferences, there's stuff online. There's lots of opportunities to help people grow in whatever it is they're doing, whether it's the tech area or it's, like you said, children's ministry or something, because that energizes them. It shows that you care and you have interest in them as volunteers. As a leader, you care about what they're doing and you care about them personally. And so, it cures boredom, because, hey, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to see how this church does it, or there's a conference that's going on here. So I just think it's so important to never stop training your volunteers.
Yeah, I think it also has another layer to it. If you send your volunteers to conferences, or now so many of the conferences are online. If you're not close, you can stream it for your volunteers. Sometimes, you, the leader, do not have to be the innovator in everything. Yeah. If you get volunteers excited about what they do, they'll come up with new ideas that are way better than anything you ever thought of. And they'll improve not only what they're doing, but how you're serving the people that are walking in your door.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it just gives people fresh energy,
Yeah, for sure.
There. Yeah, good deal. All right. Number 6, the best volunteer training is personalized. It's tailored to that person's experience and their skill set, and it's practice-based. So it's driven by real-time on-the-job feedback as well. So I didn't put this in here, but I alluded to it a few minutes ago, and that is, we used to do a deal where our church had, membership class, and then we had a Discover Your Gifts class and ministry. And there's lots of little things that we would do. And the idea behind I think we called it 201 years ago, is maybe it's 301. I think it's 301. Is you would take a kind of an evaluation. And now, Michael, you do something like this. It's not necessarily ministry oriented, but you do a purpose, find your purpose. What is it again? I'm sorry, I can't remember what you call it. What do you call it?
So similar, we did a class. Well, I do life planning, which is like
that's it.
That kind of idea on steroids. But in the ministry realm, I did it as well as a class, like 201, where we did spiritual gifts tests. We did a Myers-Briggs test. We did a few other acuity tests to help someone understand. People have to self-discover who they are and who they are made to be. You can't just tell them. You can see it all over them. Like a spouse, you can say, "Oh man, you're so good at this," and they're like, "What? Are you crazy?" Yeah. But it's true. As you help people discover, and there's several people still involved in ministry, and they're passionate about it because we found the slot that was made for them. Yeah. And vice versa. They were made to do this kind of ministry work in serving as a volunteer.
Yeah. And one of the things that we do at our church, I think is really good, is we set up shadow opportunities. So this is kind of like they're not formally in the spot, but they shadow that spot. And that's where we may say, let's shadow 3 different spots, and you figure out which one's looks the most enticing to you. So the shadow is typically one-on-one, very one-on-one. So there will be somebody that's been doing it for a while, and they're kind of leaning over, they're doing it, but they're leaning over and saying, okay, here's what's going on here. Or, they may be teaching a class and the person just sits in and watches, and they'll, communicate with them one-to-one. So it becomes a very personal training experience through shadowing that, will allow them to get some exposure as well as get some training.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, you mentioned, discovering your spiritual gifts. You mentioned Myers-Briggs, was there Taylor Johnson? Is that another one? I can't remember what they all are, but people actually get excited. So when you do these classes or you do these things with specific people, it's exciting for them to learn about themselves and begin to realize, oh yeah, I guess I do like doing that kind of stuff. So it's a combination of the two here. It's getting on the job experience, finding something that's a good fit, as Steve said, and growing and learning. Again, this is all about helping people grow. And it's not necessarily about helping your church grow, but that will happen if you make it, if you do these things correctly. You'll see church growth, you'll see maturity in your church, but it's all about helping the person, and that's why I think these things are good. Okay. All right. So where am I at here, guys? Where am I at?
7.
Number 7, vision casting is key. We kind of talked about this with our first one about the explaining the why, and the vision's a big part of that. Yeah.
And I think this needs to be constantly brought up, which is kind of what I alluded to down the notes here a little bit. But I think, there needs to be, it's the old saying, the wife says, hey, you never say I love you, and it's the old joke, well, I told you I loved you when I married you, and if I change my mind, I'll let you know. But sometimes we cast vision, do a pretty good job at it as leaders, and then that's the end of it. Then we kind of move on our little merry little way.
You assume everybody still feels that way. Andy Stanley, and I'm blanking on which one of his books he wrote this in, either on leadership or on vision casting. It's literally, if you aren't doing it at a minimum of bi-weekly, at least casting a piece of vision, this is from the stage, senior pastor from the stage, then you're going to fail in energizing the people that are actually making ministry happen. They have to continue to remember, oh, why am I here? The why is, somebody's life is going to change because of what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So vision casting is the key. I should probably change that and call it consistent vision casting, or regular vision, or whatever, bi-weekly vision, whatever. But it's so important to keep that, because people forget, and people, it needs to be in front of them. All right. Number 8, say no. Just say no to micromanagement. All right. So this is hard for me. But when you have leaders, when you do get volunteers that are really growing, and they're key volunteers, key leaders, give them some freedom. If they understand your vision, they understand the policies of the church, they're persistent, they're consistent people, and give them a little bit of liberty. Get your hands off of things and let them do their thing.
Yeah, I guess you need to establish some boundaries to make sure things aren't, going too wacky, but there's pros and cons for this too. So one of the pros is, I typically volunteer for the same spot every week. And so there's probably half a dozen people that are doing it, and you give somebody some liberty, and they'll learn and discover that, that was a cool way to do it. And somebody, they'll pass that on. They'll go, hey, Larry did it this way during the first service, and it really worked well. So, maybe you should try that. And that you would not have had that opportunity if you hadn't given them some liberty to go on a limb and try some things.
Yeah.
So,
set the parameters.
Yeah. You don't want
clear parameters, and then allow for innovation. If nobody's innovating and not improving, you're not going to get the best that you could possibly get if you don't create that innovative environment by not over managing. I had an employee, pastor on staff, and I've never seen anybody that micromanaged worse. And he had his volunteer base just disappeared. they were just gone because nobody loves to be micromanaged.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No, no, it wasn't you, Phil. It was
Oh,
somebody
okay.
else.
All right.
No,
okay.
it was somebody else. But on the opposite side of that, you also have to not micromanage, but you have to watch closely. We've over the years, you for greetings, a perfect example of culture has changed, and so you have to read people's body language, and not everybody wants a big bear hug.
Yeah.
Right.
So as you coach your volunteers, you coach them in that role to serve in a way that guests and attenders appreciate and aren't offended by.
That's where the boundaries come in, right? So you don't want to, you don't want
parameters.
the volunteers to, what are we going to get this weekend based on this set of volunteers? You want to have a consistent product and expectation from the congregations. You don't want to go
Absolutely.
too crazy. But yes, boundaries are good, but some leeway within those boundaries is also important.
I like the term you used, Michael, coaching. I think coaching is good, coaching your volunteers, so
For sure.
give them some freedom. All right, moving along here, guys. Ask number 9, ask volunteers for their feedback regarding your training program. Now, I put this up here because, 10 tips on training volunteers, but I would even say ask volunteers to give you feedback on how everything's going and how you're doing things. But specifically the training part, hey, we've been training you here for several weeks. How do you feel about it? What is this helping you? How can we improve? That's when it comes to the training part. But then also, I would just add too that, people again need to have the liberty to tell you what they think about how things are going, and whether it's the running the cameras or the sound or lighting or, other areas of ministry, they've got to have some freedom there to give you as a leader feedback. So don't be so defensive. Right? Give them that liberty,
Well, yeah. I would always say, keep your eyes out, because somebody in your organization is probably a better trainer than you are. So you cast vision, let somebody else be a great trainer.
Right.
And that way you can keep your feelings to yourself when somebody says, hey, this really kind of sucks. I don't like this.
All right. Shall we move on to the final point?
Yes, sir.
So reevaluate the roles and the volunteers on each area of ministry. So, and it's up to you how often you do this. I think you ought to do it at least once a year, maybe more, but you should reevaluate. As a leader, you need to reevaluate everything. And it may not just always be you. It may be some other people that work with you, some trusted leaders, trusted volunteers can evaluate the different ministries. But I think, we live in a world of impermanence. Things change, and roles change, and people change, and even what you do at the church could change at times. Not that your mission changes or whatever, but the way you do things. And so I think it's good sometimes to not, again, getting back to this, not, all right, this person's in this position, now let's go away. No, reevaluate. How are they doing? How do they feel things are going from their perspective?
Yeah, I think another opportunity here is you may have situations where the role for one volunteer is overwhelming. I can't do all 4 of these things during one service.
Yeah.
So you may go, maybe let's split that into 2 roles. We'll get 2 volunteers to do that. Or it could go the other way too. Like, I'm sitting here just doing this one thing the whole service. I'm kind of bored, and so is, Mary over there. What if we were able to combine those 2 things into one role? So yeah, I think it's healthy to kind of look at that and figure out balance workloads and share opportunities for getting stuff done.
Yeah, reevaluate. Absolutely. All right, guys, that's it. Any other comments before we go away here?
No, we're good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your input. Really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the Church Solutions podcast or watching us. Subscribe to us. I'll have to figure out why our last podcast didn't get to Apple. but wherever you get your podcast, look for the Church Solutions podcast, and hopefully we'll be there. And you can always go to streamingchurch.tv. That's one of our products. And if you go to the info menu, you'll see a drop down and you'll see our blogs, you'll see our podcast, and you can even watch us on YouTube if you want to. So we appreciate everybody's input. This podcast is brought to you by mychurchdaily.com. Check it out, mychurchdaily.com. It's a great tool that you can use to be on Alexa devices. If you want to get on those smart speakers, Amazon, Alexa, the Echo, whatever those things are, the dots. We've got 5 or 6 of them here in my house. I don't know what they're called, but we have them. But you can do a flash briefing using mychurchdaily.com. It's just loading some audio, and you can schedule it, in advance and set it up, and you can connect with your people. People can get their flash briefing. They might get their sports briefing, their weather briefing, their news briefing, and they can get a briefing from your church. mychurchdaily.com. It's a 14-day free trial. Check it out. All right, gentlemen, thank you for your input today.
All right, great to be here.
Always.
And again, thank you for listening to the Church Solutions podcast. Stay tuned for another episode coming up soon. Please take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Phil Thompson. Adios.